movie begins with Wallace, a mustachioed young podcaster, sharing outrageous and often crude stories with his heavier co-host Teddy. Their humor pushes boundaries, landing some jokes, missing others. But today, Wallace's attention is caught by something truly bizarre. A video of a wannabe samurai practicing with a katana, accidentally hacking off his own leg. Fascinated, Wallace immediately decides he must track down the man for an interview, booking a flight to Canada without hesitation. As he prepares for his trip, he refuses to bring his girlfriend Allie, insisting this is strictly a work venture, while Teddy stays behind, avoiding the flight entirely. Arriving in Canada, Wallace's expectations collapse. The man he sought is dead, and Wallace finds himself at a funeral instead of an interview. Frustration and anger weigh heavily on him, and after a few failed attempts to vent his disappointment, he stumbles into a bar and calls Teddy to complain. He wanders around, aimless, drowning in silence, and the feeling that his journey has been wasted. But in a restroom, his eyes catch a curious handbill offering free lodging in exchange for hearing extraordinary stories from an elderly man named Howard Howe. Intrigued by the promise of wild tales, Wallace calls the number, setting up a meeting that will change his life forever. Wallace arrives at Howe's secluded estate, greeted by a wheelchair-bound old man whose voice is courteous, almost theatrical. He is served tea with a faint medicinal scent, and he listens as Howard recounts his life steeped in hardship. Parents dying young, abusive orphanages, psychiatric hospitals, and horrors no human should endure. Despite the grim past, Howard's storytelling is captivating. He recounts surviving a shipwreck aboard the Anastasia in icy northern seas, clinging to life until a walrus miraculously saves him, feeding and protecting him on a desolate island. Wallace, enthralled, drinks deeply of the stories and of the tea, oblivious to the darkness brewing. Within moments, Wallace begins to feel dizzy, his vision blurring. He tries to speak, to ask questions, but his body betrays him. The tea, laced with a sedative, takes hold, and he collapses into unconsciousness. As he drifts, the audience sees a contrast between Wallace's cynicism and the genuine affection he holds for Allie, the soft-hearted woman who still believes in the man he once was. When he awakens, he is covered in a blanket, his legs hidden, and Howard stands over him with an impossible calm. The old man claims Wallace was bitten by a venomous spider, explaining the blackout and setting the stage for something far more sinister. Wallace soon discovers the truth in the most horrifying way. His leg is amputated, a prelude to an unimaginable transformation. Howard reveals he can walk and had been feigning frailty to lull Wallace into a false sense of security. Every step Wallace takes now feels like a trap closing around him. He tries desperately to contact Allie and Teddy, but his efforts are futile. As he struggles, Howard strikes him again, blacking him out, and declares coldly, "Your life as you knew it is over, Mr. Britton." From this point, Wallace is no longer the man he once was. When he awakens again, the horror deepens. Both legs are gone, his arms sewn to his sides, teeth removed, and his tongue taken to prevent speech. Grunts and animalistic noises are all he can make. Howard explains his twisted goal: to recreate the walrus that once saved him, granting it a second chance at life, and Wallace is to become the living embodiment of that creature. In the mansion's basement, a pool mimics the lonely island from Howard's past, and Wallace is forced to adapt to the existence of a walrus, subjected to cruel training and the echoing reminder of past victims whose corpses litter the tiled floor. Meanwhile, Allie and Teddy refuse to wait idly. Desperate to find Wallace, they scour local authorities, seeking assistance that is limited by Wallace's public persona as a prankster. Doubt clouds the officers' minds, but they mark him missing and give the duo the contact of a private detective, Guy Lapointe. Lapointe has spent years hunting the very man who now holds Wallace captive, his obsession costing him a career and marriage, yet he remains relentless. He shares stories of victims with limbs missing, sewn to torsos, painting a picture of a killer operating far beyond the imagination of ordinary men. Allie, Teddy, and Lapointe trace Wallace's movements, piecing together the journey that brought him to Howard's estate. Clues lead them to the store where Wallace bought his signature giant plastic cup, and the shopkeepers recall the humorous, oblivious American with the mustache. A notebook reveals an address, the final breadcrumb on a trail of terror. Despite the tension and the uncertainty of what awaits, the trio heads toward the mansion, armed and prepared to confront the unimaginable. Back in the basement, Wallace endures Howard's sadistic training. Each day is a struggle against the new form imposed upon him, forcing him to learn to swim, eat, and move like a walrus. The pool becomes a cage, the waterline a mirror reflecting bones of previous victims, an unspoken testament to the old man's obsession and cruelty. The air is thick with the sense of past horrors and impending doom, and Wallace's transformation pushes him toward the edge of human endurance. In a chilling confession, Howard reveals to Wallace that he once killed the original walrus, Mr. Tusk, consumed its meat, and has lived with a consuming regret ever since. He now sees humanity as unworthy, valuing the walrus above all else, and intends to perfect his experiment through Wallace. The old man dons a grotesque walrus suit, tusks fashioned from Wallace's own bones, and declares a duel that will test the limits of man and monster alike. The basement becomes a theater of wordless bellows, tusks, and primal rage. At this moment, Allie, Teddy, and LaPointe are maneuvering through the mansion, oblivious to the full horror of the basement. Their approach coincides with the climax of Wallace's brutal transformation, as he rips into Howard with a ferocity that shocks even them. Blood soaks the tiles, and Wallace's eyes, now devoid of human comprehension, reflect only pain and rage. He cannot speak, cannot plead, and can only act with the raw instinct of the creature Howard forced him to become. Detective LaPointe raises his gun to end the nightmare, but a voice cries out, halting the moment. Time seems to stretch for the living, and a year passes slowly in memory and consequence. Wallace's friends, Allie and Teddy, remain vigilant, haunted by the memory of the man they knew and the being he has become. They navigate the corridors of the mansion, each step carrying the weight of uncertainty and fear, unaware that Wallace has fully embraced the terrifying transformation imposed on him. In the aftermath, the three reach a city zoo where a solitary walrus awaits, hidden in a cave. Allie carries a fish, attempting to lure Wallace, now fully transformed, back to recognition and connection. She calls his name, hoping to bridge the impossible gap between human and beast. Teddy stands silently, tension building as the creature emerges, eyes reflecting the memory of his old friends and the remnants of the man he once was. The emotional reunion is harrowing and poignant. Allie weeps, recalling lessons of the soul and the power of tears to distinguish humans from animals. Wallace, the walrus, receives the fish in the presence of those who loved him, a fragile link to the humanity stripped from him. In that moment, the audience is confronted with the profound tragedy and the darkly poetic consequences of obsession, science, and cruelty. Every detail of Wallace's transformation emphasizes the horror of body mutilation and psychological torment. The stitches, missing limbs, and lost tongue are not mere shock elements. If this chilling journey shocked and captivated you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Great Animation Recaps, and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to experience our epic, dark, and unforgettable movie recaps. Drop a comment below sharing what you would do if faced with Wallace's terrifying fate, and don't forget to check out our other recaps for more stories that push the limits of imagination, horror, and human endurance.